Well, church family, here we are again together. Now, I know a lot of us, the picture in our mind is when this is all over and we kind of get back to normal. In reality, it's likely that what we have in our mind picture will not actually come about, that things will have changed. In some ways, that's negative. In some ways, that's positive. I think sometimes churches and individuals fall into a position in their spiritual life where they become satisfied with where they are. In preparation for this series, I've asked the elders and the pastoral staff to give me some input on things that they feel that are positive that have come out of this. And with regard to complacency in Christians, one of the elders said the following: "For many, going to church and Sunday school, serving in the church, reading the Bible, and saying their prayers is the extent of their spiritual life. They have a difficult time processing such things deeply to help them identify the idols in their hearts, bring out the sinful patterns, heal the past hurts, and open their eyes to God and the gospel in new ways. Many just want to get through it and get on with spiritual business as usual." We have a great church here. Our pastor's biblically based teachings to us each week are second to none. And our pastoral staff, our support staff, have very good organizational and administrative abilities to oversee, guide, and think of new ways of presenting the programs that meet the needs of all of our members. At the same time, we look at our facilities, and while some people may think that we need this building or that building, in reality, the facilities that we have are adequate for the size and needs of our church at this time. Yet we read in the Bible that many times, even in good situations, God chooses to shake things up in order to grow His saints. We think about the book of James. It begins, and the whole book was written because James had lost his congregation as the Jews were dispersed all over the known world at that time. And so that book was written to them, and they could no longer meet together. It's easy for our minds to go to the negative things about a situation that we've gone through. And Pastor Tyler's series has chronicled where our minds tend to go in these types of situations. But he's also noted how God's Word provides the way for us to make it through such times. Now, as I prepare for tonight's lesson, I thought that I would focus on the positive things that have come about out of this crisis. And we could start out by dividing it into two parts. And I'd like to focus, first of all, on the positive things that have come about for our church out of this. I think that most of us would have difficulty identifying how many sermons we have heard a reference to Romans 8:28. Most of us probably grew up memorizing it, or if we didn't, we've heard it enough that it's pretty much set in our mind. But let's just take a minute to review it. "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purposes." As I've been preparing for this time together, I've come to realize that seldom do we as individuals or collectively have such opportunities to view Romans 8:28 in action, to actually see good come from bad circumstances. I'd like to share some of those good things. Now, first of all, I'm going to share the good things that have come about for our church. And then secondly, I'll follow up with good things that have come about for us as individuals. I first of all would like to talk about Sunday message videos and the music videos that we have been having. I would be negligent if I didn't recognize Owen Fahey and Clint Hunter for the work that they've done in making these available to us. Standing behind the camera right now is Owen, and the many times that he has put in videotaping these and editing them so he can make our blenders look good. Appreciate that. And then Clint, as he's taken the work that Owen has completed and put them online. I hope that when we do get back together, if you see the two of them, that you tell them how much you appreciate the many hours that they put into this. In terms of the videos, we've been able to continue to hear our pastor present the Word. But not only that, to present it in such a way that it's addressed the feelings that we have felt during this period of time and give us guidance and wisdom in how the Bible can direct our thoughts to thinking the way that God would have us to think. Pastor Tyler, in response to my request for input, indicated that he had received messages from a number of our church members who have said that members of their families who would never think about coming to church have viewed the videos along with them. And so we can see how God has taken it just from us sitting and listening and absorbing for ourselves the message that Pastor Tyler has, that it has actually expanded itself well beyond that. I wanted also to recognize the worship team and the time that they have spent and the time that they have put in to pull together some tremendous music for us. And then also, for those of you who haven't found it or are unaware of it for some reason, I'd like to recognize Jill and the fine Christian music that she's put together, I believe 4 or 5 times now, through Spotify. Now, I don't know what Spotify is, but I know it's a software program, and that if you open up the materials that Jill has sent out in Spotify, that you're able to listen to hours and hours of fine Christian music. My wife, Mary, has been particularly attached to that. In fact, I might add that this past week, when the last edition of it came out, that her phone, which is probably 2 or 3 years old, that she went to her nightstand and took out her earphones, and the first time ever, and walked around listening to the music personally rather than out loud the way she's been doing it. I'd also like to recognize the availability that we have had of the prayer meeting, Wednesday night prayer meeting videos. Now, an interesting thing about that is that my wife said that she went in to view on the website to see how many people had already viewed last week's video. And she indicated that 78 people had looked at it. Now, the interesting thing about that is this. The map room where our Wednesday night Bible study takes place seats only about 42 people, which means that more people have been able to see the Wednesday night Bible study times than would normally be able to see them. And we think about the multitude of people who are involved in various activities on Wednesday nights, whether it be Word of Life, or whether it be the high school ministry or the college ministry or other things, that individual Bible studies are things that there are quite often reasons, and we might think of older adults who aren't able to drive in the dark and aren't able to come on Wednesdays, that this has made our Wednesday night Bible study times more available for those people. The next thing I'd like to recognize is the Wednesday night prayer journals. For those who come on Wednesday nights, they're readily available, and yet what we've been able to do during this period of time is actually make them wider in their availability and have actually been able to send them out to people in the church. And I think that's important, because it's important that we know what are the things that are going on. Those people who are having particular difficult times and suffering, and those who have lost family members, and those who need to have phone calls and need to be encouraged. The next thing I'd like to look at is the adult Sunday schools. You know, to many of us, the word Zoom takes us back to our days of looking at comic strips, whether it was a speedboat going down the road, whether it was a racing car, or whether it was a rocket going to the moon. But Zoom has taken on a new meaning to us today as a result of this. In our adult Sunday school classes, at least 3 of them have been using Zoom. And Zoom is a program where the Sunday school teacher can go online and set up a time and then notify the people in their class that it's going to be a live telecast. Now you think, well, you know, that's just like turning on to a website on television and watching somebody. But the thing about Zoom is that each person who logs in is able to interact with each other and with the teacher. And so it really is a live experience, the best thing that you can have next to actually being there. Now, why are these things important? Because there are people who can't be at their Sunday school classes for many times. And so as we look at many of the things that we're going to detail here, these are things that God has put into place that will allow us to be a better church as we merge, as we come out of this current circumstance. Other adult teachers have put together brief written lessons of their Sunday presentations to go out to their people. In some cases, that was in response to the fact that people may not have had access to the things necessary to go and watch something live in Zoom. And one of the other things that is important, one of the things that we've seen is that all of the adult Sunday school classes have increased in the amount of communication between the members of their classes, whether it be cards, whether it be letters, whether it be emails, whatever it is. There's been a tremendous amount of communication that has gone on, and that has increased, and we should be encouraged to continue to do that. Galen Levert's class, just before this all began, Luana Holman had actually put together a program for the class that she titled Never Alone. And as a result of that, before the lockdown period came, people were visiting, people in nursing homes, people recovering from illnesses, and so on in our class. It's continued on that those people have continued to phone other people in the class regularly and meet their needs. And now, let's look at college ministries. We see that this is the period of time during the year when a lot of the Liberty students are away. There are some who live in the area, so they aren't all gone, but that the leadership of the college ministries have continued to communicate with those that they serve, and giving input and feedback and counseling and all of those types of things that they do. This is something that's really important because this is a group of people that come here during the school year and then go back to their regular residences, whether it be over Christmas break or spring break, or whether it be for the long summer haul. And so this is putting into place those kinds of resources that will be necessary for serving this population in the future. As we continue to look at good things that have happened for the church, let's take a look at youth ministries. You know, we're fortunate to have somebody like Reed. What a wonderful young man, and how he loves those students that he works with. He noted to me a number of things. First of all, that he has videos each week available to the youth on Instagram. Now, I have to admit that I'm an old timer. I mean, I've just been dragged into the world of Facebook, and Instagram is something that I'm not familiar with, but I understand that Instagram is something that the young people really follow. It's kind of their generation of Facebook. And each week, Reed is presenting lessons to them. Another thing that Reed noted to me was that a number of the people in the youth group have come to him with a desire to know how to study the Bible on their own, because they aren't able to be together for Bible studies and things along that line. Or that they have a desire to grow spiritually, and so he has been able to communicate with each one of them individually and add something to his relationship with them that will be of great value to them on into the future. And then another thing, just so that you know, this is all being filmed in the underground. Now, some of you may not even know what the underground is. The underground is our old sanctuary that goes back to something like 1893 or something or other. And for the last couple of years, Reed and the youth group and other helpers have been modifying the facilities to bring them up to date and to help them better serve the needs. This is where the youth group meets. And this time has allowed him to get down here and finish up some projects that his busy schedule had not allowed him to get to. As we look at the children's ministry, we want to thank Cindy Middaugh. Although she's gone through a time, and we continue to pray for her, the loss of her dear mother Jenny, whom we all loved, she has continued to communicate with all of the Sunday school teachers. And the teachers have continued to send materials out to all of the young people in the children's program. And some of you may have never heard of Flat Sam. Now, Flat Sam was somebody that was a thing that was around when my kids were young, and so I'm familiar with it. And some of you may be younger than that, and some of you may be older than that. But one of the things that Pastor Tyler and his wife came up with was a flat Pastor Tyler. Now, let me explain it this way. Flat Sam was where there was a picture of this character named Sam, and you would put it on a piece of paper and you would send it through the mail to a friend. And as they traveled around, whether they went to Colorado or they went to the beach or other places, they would take pictures of themselves with Flat Sam. Or they would send postcards from places they had been from. So you'd get feedback on the travels of Flat Sam. Well, now we have Flat Pastor Tyler. And my wife was showing me a number of the pictures that are out there and around about kids swinging with Flat Pastor Tyler or swimming with him or at the beach or at a barbecue or a whole bunch of different situations. A wonderful way to involve our kids in the type of things that make them think about our church and our pastor and the things that are of value. And then for older adults. Now, this one I'm going to talk about just because it's something that we discovered through this period of time that we still have to figure out exactly how to address it. Donnie Scarlett had been communicating with his Sunday school class and discovered that there were a number of his older adults who had never come across any of the communications that had gone out from the church. And he contacted me, and since I'm in Galen's class and there are a lot of older adults in that class, I began to make telephone calls directly to everybody in the class that I could get a hold of. And when I found out that there were a number of them who had no computers, they didn't have any smartphones, they didn't have any iPads or anything along that line. In fact, a lot of them didn't even have email addresses. And so as a result of that, it's been identified for us, a population that we need to do an individual survey of and find out how do we communicate with each of them. And it may be that it's only through snail mail. And if that's it, then we need to find ways to make that happen. Because without them, we aren't meeting the needs of this older population. With regard to giving, I asked Joe how things were going, and he indicated while we weren't on a pace to meet our weekly need, that in fact the giving has been consistent all the way through this period of time. And that's good to know, because it means that people realize the responsibility of supporting God's ministry. Some people actually feel, I think, that they need to come to church and slip it into the mailbox just because they need to have that tactile feeling of giving to God. At the same time, the Annie Armstrong Easter offering we are close to the goal, but we aren't quite there. And let this serve as a reminder. If you still want to give to that, there's no reason why you can't, and we encourage you to do so. By not simply returning to the church we were, but by continuing many of the things we have noted, our church in the new normal will be even better than the one of our memories. And now for us as individuals. And the first thing that we need to look at is God's provisions. And the first thing under that is jobs, because obviously that plays such an important role in our lives. Now, I know that there are some out there that their employment has remained constant, that they've continued to go to work on a regular schedule, or maybe they've changed from going into the office to being able to do their work from home, and that there's been minimal change and there's not been any major change in their financial situation. But I also know that there are others who have lost their jobs. And for them, the time has been more difficult. A number of them have contacted the church and told us that they are in need of jobs. And I would encourage you that if you have a business or you have something and you need some people to work for you through this remaining period of time, that you contact the church office and let them know. And we will be glad to talk to people and let them know that those openings are there. At the same time, we've also become aware that a number of the people whose jobs were phased out due to this have gotten jobs that were better than the ones that they had. Who would ever have thought that that would happen from such circumstances? And our church has a food bank. It's kind of a fallback for church members if they have need for food. But I think that probably most of us have not really had any issues with regard to being able to eat good meals, and so on. In fact, Pastor Tyler, in his response to me at the end of it, noted that he's had some difficulty keeping off all of the weight that he took off during his tremendous time of working on it and not being able to get to the gym or do those sort of things. And he listed that as, oh no, that was a negative. And I had to remind him that no, that's a positive, because it reminds us that God has given you food to eat. And then also under God's provision, how many of us in our lifetime, and I'm older than most of you, have ever gotten a free check from the government? And I know that for many, this has been a lifesaver. It's been something that has helped them make it through this difficult times. But you know what? It might have had the president's signature on those checks, but in reality, that money came from God. Continuing our list of good things that have happened for us as individuals. There's spiritual growth. I've had noted to me a number of people who have found that they've had some issues to deal with, and it forced them to go to God's Word, to work out and work their way through the process of coming to rest and understanding of what was going on. And I think Pastor's series has helped in this way. A number of other people have noted more time with family. Pastor Joe said that as he drives down the street, he's seen more and more fathers out on their lawns playing with their kids. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. The problem is, we don't want to go back to those not being priorities. I think most of us who have had the time to spend more time with family have gained a deep understanding of the necessity that God has placed on the family values and our responsibilities to our family. In addition to that, someone noted that they had phoned some relatives that they hadn't talked to for 20 years. We were able to, at one point, have for Mother's Day, in fact, to have a Zoom time with all of our kids and grandkids, and how great that was to be live on it and interacting with each other. They always enjoy so much getting together. And then finally, I'd like to note about many of us have had much more opportunity to interact with our neighbors. Mary and I go out for walks. People in our neighborhood, more than we have ever seen, have been out for walks, and the opportunity to stop as we're going out and about and speak to someone on the other side of the street and get to know them. In fact, and I must confess that one of the individuals in our neighborhood whose house we had never been to contacted a bunch of us old people and asked us over to his big, expansive screen porch to just have a time together of eating some snacks and talking. I think we tried to observe as many of the requirements for social distancing, but I have to say, what a blessing it was in the middle of all of this. This list could go on, but I think it's clearly evident that God has worked together good from the situation that we've been through. I'd like to close with one last thought. The first phrase of the Baptist faith and mission with regard to the church reads as follows: a New Testament church of the Lord Jesus Christ is an autonomous local congregation of baptized believers. One of our elders noted the following. This is a paraphrase, by the way. For the past several months, we have been without our facilities, our face-to-face meetings, and without our monthly fellowship potluck suppers. But we have discovered that we don't need these to be a church. As we move on through phases 1, 2, and 3, let's not forget how God has shown us great evidence of how He can bring good things in bad times. Well, church family, keep safe. I pray God's blessings and protection on you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.